The store was called Hadley's Hardware. It sat on Main Street in a town whose name I've forgotten, though I remember every detail of that afternoon. I was driving back to Los Angeles from a visit to an old friend in Carmel. This was the spring of 1968, and I'd taken the long way home through the valley because I wasn't in any hurry and because the hills were green that year. The kind of green California only shows you after a wet winter. The car needed gas, and I needed coffee. So I pulled into this little town, one of those places with a single stoplight and a barber shop that still had the pole. I filled the tank at a station that smelled like motor oil and cut grass, and then I walked down the block looking for somewhere to sit. There was no diner, but there was this hardware store with a bench out front and a sign that said, "Coffee 5 cents," in the window. I went inside. It was the kind of store you don't see anymore. Wooden floors that creaked underfoot, bins of nails and screws, garden tools hanging on pegboard walls, a ceiling fan turning slowly above the counter, the smell of sawdust and metal polish. Behind the register stood a man in his 60s with white hair and a face that looked like it had spent decades squinting into the sun. He was talking to 2 younger men, locals by the look of them, both in work boots and faded shirts. At the far end of the counter, standing very still, was a young man, maybe 22, 23, dark hair, clean-shaven, wearing a jacket that was too warm for the weather. He had the look of someone passing through. I poured myself a cup of coffee from the pot by the window and sat down on a stool near the front. I wasn't paying much attention at first. I was thinking about the drive ahead, about a script I was considering, about nothing in particular. Then I heard the owner's voice change. It got hard. It got loud. "I saw you put it in your pocket," he said, pointing at the young man. "Don't tell me I didn't." The young man shook his head. "Sir, I haven't taken anything. I was just looking at the— Empty your pockets. Right now." The 2 locals had stepped back, arms crossed, watching. One of them had a little smile on his face. The other just looked bored, like this was a show he'd seen before. "I don't have anything of yours," the young man said. His voice was steady, but I could see his hands trembling. "I came in to buy a flashlight. That's all. Then you won't mind showing us what's in your pockets." I set my coffee down. I watched. The young man slowly emptied his jacket. A wallet, a bus ticket, some change, a letter, folded twice. Nothing else. The owner stared at the items on the counter like they had personally offended him. Then he looked up at the young man with something worse than anger. It was certainty. The kind of certainty that doesn't need evidence. "Check the other pocket. The inside one. There's nothing there." "Then show me." The young man reached into his jacket and pulled the pocket inside out. Empty. For a moment, nobody spoke. I thought that would be the end of it. I thought the owner would apologize, or at least step back. I thought the thing would resolve itself the way these things are supposed to resolve, but the owner just narrowed his eyes. Must have ditched it when I wasn't looking. You people are good at that. You people. I felt something tighten in my chest. Not anger exactly. Something older than anger. Something that had been building in me for years. Through all the times I'd watched and said nothing. Through all the times I'd told myself it wasn't my business. The young man started gathering his things from the counter. His movements were careful, deliberate. He was trying not to shake. He was trying to hold on to his dignity in front of these men who had already made up their minds about him. "I think I'll be going," he said quietly. "Not until I call the sheriff." "On what grounds?" I heard myself say. Everyone turned to look at me. The owner, the 2 locals, the young man. I hadn't meant to speak, but there it was. "Excuse me?" the owner said. I stood up from the stool. "I'm tall. And I've learned over the years that sometimes just standing is enough to change the shape of a room. Not this time. I said, on what grounds? The man emptied his pockets. He doesn't have anything. The owner looked me over. I was dressed simply khakis, a blue shirt, driving shoes. Nothing that announced who I was or what I did for a living. Just another traveler stopping for coffee. This doesn't concern you, mister. I think it does. I'm a witness. And what I witnessed is a man being accused without evidence. One of the locals stepped forward. Hey, I know you. You're that actor. From the movies. I didn't respond to that. I kept my eyes on the owner. Here's what I saw, I said. I saw a young man walk into your store. I saw him look at your merchandise. I saw him come to the counter. I did not see him take anything. And neither did you. I saw him. You saw what you expected to see. That's not the same thing. The room got very quiet. The ceiling fan turned overhead. Somewhere outside, a truck rumbled past. The owner's face had gone red. You don't know anything about this town. You don't know what kind of problems we've had. You don't know. I know a man is innocent until proven guilty. I know that's supposed to mean something in this country. I know that if you call the sheriff and make an accusation you can't back up, you might find yourself explaining it to people you'd rather not explain it to. I wasn't threatening him. Not exactly. The young man stood frozen by the counter, his belongings still in his hands. He was looking at me like he couldn't quite believe what was happening. The owner glanced at his two friends. They had uncrossed their arms. The little smile was gone. Fine, the owner said finally. Get out, both of you, and don't come back. I reached into my pocket and put $1 on the counter. Then I walked out. The young man followed me. We stood on the sidewalk in the afternoon sun. The town looked the same as it had 20 minutes earlier, the same brick buildings, the same quiet street, the same American flags hanging from the lampposts, but something had shifted. I don't know how to thank you, the young man said. You don't have to. Nobody's ever done that for me before. Stood up like that. I looked at him. He had intelligent eyes, tired eyes, the kind of eyes that had seen too much disappointment for someone his age. Where are you headed? I asked. Los Angeles. I've got a job interview on Monday. First real job I've had a chance at since I got back. Got back from where? Vietnam. I felt something catch in my throat. My son Stephen was over there right now, doing his duty in a war I had publicly opposed. The complexity of that, loving your country and questioning it at the same time. Supporting your son while marching against the policy that sent him there. It was something I lived with every day. What branch? I asked. Army, 68th Medical Group. I was a corpsman, a medic, a man who had spent his time in that jungle trying to save lives. And now he was being accused of stealing from a hardware store. You need a ride, I said. He hesitated. I've got a bus ticket. That ticket will still be good tomorrow. I'm driving to Los Angeles right now. You can be there by evening. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he nodded. We walked to my car together. I opened the passenger door for him, and he climbed in. As I started the engine, I noticed his hands had finally stopped shaking. We drove for a while in silence. The hills rolled past, golden, now in the late afternoon light. I thought about what had happened in that store. I thought about all the times it probably happened when there was no one there to say anything. Can I ask you something? The young man said. Go ahead. Why did you do it? You didn't have to get involved. Most people don't. I thought about the question. I thought about the roles I'd played over the years, the lawyers and soldiers and fathers. The men who stood up when standing up was hard. I thought about how much of that was pretend and how much of it was real. I did it because I was there, I said finally, and because someone had to. He nodded slowly. That man in the store, he didn't even see me. I mean, he looked right at me, but he didn't see me. No, I said. He didn't. That happens a lot. People see what they expect to see. I know. How do you fight that? How do you make people actually look? I didn't have an answer. Not a complete one. But I said what I believed. One person at a time. One moment at a time. You stand where you can be seen, and you don't look away, and eventually some people start to see. Not everyone, but some. He was quiet for a while after that. When I looked over, he was staring out the window at the passing fields. I wanted to hit him, he said quietly. That man in the store. I wanted to knock him down, but I knew if I did that, it would just prove what he already thought about me. Yes, so I just stood there, and I hated myself for standing there. You didn't do anything wrong, I know, but it felt wrong. It felt like giving up. To a wum, to a wum, to a wum. I understood exactly what he meant. There's a kind of violence in being still when everything in you wants to move. A kind of surrender in keeping your dignity when someone is trying to take it from you. It costs something. It always costs something. What you did took more strength than fighting, I said. Holding yourself together like that. Refusing to become what he expected. That's the hardest thing there is. He turned to look at me. You really believe that? I've spent my whole life trying to. The sun was setting by the time we reached the outskirts of Los Angeles. The sky had turned orange and pink above the hills, and the lights of the city were just beginning to flicker on below us. I dropped him at a bus station in Pasadena, where he could catch a local line to his interview. Before he got out, he reached across and shook my hand. I don't know your name, he said. I never asked. Gregory, I said. Gregory Peck. His eyes widened slightly. Then he smiled. The first real smile I'd seen from him. I've seen your movies, he said. You're nothing like I expected. Neither are you. He got out of the car and stood on the sidewalk, his jacket over his arm, looking back at me through the open window. Thank you, he said, for what you did back there. And for this. Good luck with your interview. Yes, sir. He walked into the station. I watched until he disappeared through the doors, and then I pulled away. I never saw him again. I don't know if he got the job, if he made a life for himself, if he's still out there somewhere. I never even learned his name. But I think about that afternoon sometimes. I think about that hardware store with its creaking floors and its ceiling fan turning slowly overhead. I think about the look on that owner's face when he said, "You people," like the words tasted good in his mouth. And I think about what it cost that young man to stand there and empty his pockets and keep his voice steady when everything inside him must have been screaming. That's the thing about dignity. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't demand recognition. It just stands there, quiet and unbroken, waiting for someone to notice. Most of the time, nobody does. But sometimes, every once in a while, somebody stays behind. Somebody says something. Somebody refuses to look away. And maybe that's not enough. Maybe it's never enough. But it's what I had. It's what I could do. And I've tried to do it, whenever I could, for as long as I've been alive.